So thank you everybody for coming. Hello, this is Jill Hawthorne from Pitzer at Home, class of 87, bringing you this special occasion with Professor Carmen Fott and alumna Karen Eisenhauer, class of 13, talking about their research in language and gender in Disney and Pixar movies. So I hand it over to Karen for the introduction.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. As she said, I'm Karen Eisenhauer. I'm a Pitzer graduate, class of 2013, and co-author of this Disney research. And I am so excited to introduce Professor Carmen Fott for tonight's Screenings with Scholars event. Carmen is a linguistics professor at Pitzer with a specialty in sociolinguistics, which is the study of social information that language communicates in the world. And her classes at Pitzer approach this issue super accessibly and engagingly from all different angles, from race to class, media representations, and gender, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And I can guarantee that these are all fascinating angles because I think I took every single one of Carmen's available classes during my tenure at Pitzer. In fact, I came to Pitzer thinking that I was going to be maybe in foreign languages, knowing I had an interest in the topic, but the first class I took from Carmen, Language and Society, absolutely revolutionized the way that I think about language and the social world, and ended up not only pivoting my major to linguistics and anthropology, but also had me go on to get a graduate degree in the same topic. So I feel really grateful to Carmen for that mentorship. I also have been working with her on this Disney work for upwards of, I want to say 10 years now. In 2011, I was lucky enough to be offered a research assistantship for the summer, watching Disney movies, which who would turn that down? But on top of doing that, I also learned like so many great skills about data collection and synthesis, things that I still use today. And it was such a great experience that we got to keep working together past that summer, actually past when I graduated, and through to the present day. And as the project grew, we've been able to do national presentations on this Disney research. We've been able to engage with the press in a variety of ways. And now we are even writing a full-length book on the topic published with Cambridge Press. And I owe this all to Carmen's great mentorship and like just shimmying over there. I just owe so much to her, and I feel really lucky to have been able to work with her as a student, a mentee, a research assistant, and now I'm proud to say a co-author and friend. And I am so excited for you to hear what we've been working on. So I'm going to pass it over to Carmen to talk about language in Disney movies.
Thank you, Karen. It's kind of funny to have her introduce me because I can tell you for sure this work would not be where it's at if I hadn't had Karen, because she started out as a lowly research assistant counting this and that, and then she got experience enough with it that I was like, okay, we'll hire minions for you to supervise, and then I'll just, and then you can just do kind of the management level. And at a certain point, I realized there was some of the stuff she knew more about than I did, and I'm like, okay, you got to come on board. So we started doing papers together, and then I was like, well, heck, if we're going to do a book, let's do a book. And so that's how we ended up being co-authors. All right, well, welcome so much. Thank you for coming. I love to talk about this stuff. It's a lot of fun. And they asked me to just a movie, and I picked Coco, which is one of my favorites. People I think mistakenly that because we do this research on the Disney and Pixar movies, and some of it's very critical, that we don't enjoy the movies, which we do, depending on which ones they are. And so Coco, I think, is a lovely one. And if you haven't seen it, you're going to enjoy it. And it's also super timely for Day of the Dead. So I'm going to do a very short presentation with some slides. I'm going to ask you to maybe put some stuff in the chat. Everyone can put stuff in the chat, right? It's enabled for everyone. Okay. So I'm going to do that. It's not going to take a long time, and then I'll just leave it open to questions for whatever people would like to ask. Oh, wait, hang on just a second. I just realized I need to have this open if I'm going to share. I will have totally figured out all the Zoom stuff exactly when the semester is over. Okay. Hang on. All right. Let's see. Okay. I'm having trouble getting to my other screen. Hold on just a second. Okay, here we go. La la. there. Does that look okay? Y'all can see? Yes? Okay. Okay, so this is our research. I'm just going to show you some of the very basic things. So, oops, I forgot how this works. There we go. I was thinking we could start by having you put, this is something Karen always asks, what is your favorite Disney movie or Pixar movie? If you could put it in the chat. And I can't actually see it right now, but someone is monitoring the chat, so maybe you can let me know what some of them are. Nobody? No, you don't have a favorite. Okay, if you don't have a favorite Disney movie, you could go ahead and put in the chat, I have no favorite. I don't like Disney or Pixar. It'd be interesting if that turns out to be true.
We have Toy Story, Mulan, Coco, Lion King.
Oops, oh, I went. Now I've got to go back. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, Lion King is actually not in our data set. I'll get to that in a second. But okay. So we our research is on the Disney and Pixar movies, and I have a slide later that shows exactly which movies we looked at. But we focus on the Disney princess movies for the first part of it, and then when that seemed interesting, we went ahead and did the Pixar movies as well. And we said the host muted me, so I don't know why that was. What was I talking too long? Too loud? No, just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, I think it was just a glitch. Okay, so let's go on. So why are we studying gender in Disney? There's a lot of messages about gender in Disney. This is I was going to ask Karen to sing it, but in the end, I decided to skip that part. But this is the lyrics from Poor Unfortunate Souls. If you've seen The Little Mermaid, you've probably heard it. And it's, you're kind of focused on what's going on in the story, but this actually gives some very specific information about language and gender, which is that it's better for girls to be quiet. And Ariel, in fact, ends up giving up her voice. So, there's some messages about gender in Disney. Now we'll get to the question of like, is this just entertainment in a minute, but just to show you what we're looking at and why we thought it would be interesting. Okay, these are the movies that we looked at. This is the first screen. It used to be, we did a whole section on just these and then we added the rest. So we have the Disney movies. The oldest one is Snow White in 1937 and Toy Story, I don't know if you could see that, 1995. Okay. And then these are the most recent ones, which we just added. We did Moana. Moana's officially a princess. We only have the ones that are official princesses. Frozen 2 is the most recent in 2019. And on the Pixar side, we haven't gone past, there's a few other movies, I think, but we haven't gone past Coco, which is 2017. Okay, so let's see what you think. I'm going to need the chat for this. Karen or Brooke or whoever would like to help me with it. So we're going to look at male and female characters. Do you think there are more male or more female characters in the Disney princess movies? Now remember, these are just the princess movies, not the ones like Lion King or whatever, just the ones that feature a princess, an official princess. What do you think? I can hardly see.
So far, we have 4 votes for male characters and 2 votes for female characters.
Okay. What do you think about Pixar? More male characters or more female characters? Pixar, it's all of them. It's not a select set.
This is coming in more uniformly male. I think we have 1 vote for female and then 5 or 6 for more male characters.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that's the number of characters they are. And the other thing we're going to show you data on is how much they speak. So given that, our thing about women being silent and so forth from Ursula, who talks more in the princess movies? Would you think it's male characters, female characters, or about the same? And then same question for Pixar. In the princess movies, let's do that one first. In the princess movies, who do you think talks more? Male characters, female characters, are about the same? Just the princess movies. Oops, ooh,
This one's coming in.
Sorry.
This one's coming in a little bit more split. We have some votes for males and some votes for female characters.
And nobody said about the same.
Nobody said about the same.
Okay, and now do Pixar. How about Pixar? Pixar movies, who think you could talk more? Male characters, female characters, are about the same.
We have one about the same, one vote for, or 2, 3, 4 votes for male characters.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, here we go. Let's find out. So let's start with the characters, how many characters there are, and we'll just do the Disney princess movies. So here you go. Hopefully you can see that well. Here are the character counts in a very traditional fashion. We did blue for the male characters and pink for the female characters. That's all the Disney princess movies from Snow White to Frozen 2. La la. You're welcome to comment in the chat if you have any comments about this. Who won? Yeah, it's boys for the win, right? The only movie where it comes quite close to being similar is Sleeping Beauty. And I wouldn't exactly, say that somehow that means it's a feminist movie or something, but yeah, definitely more men. Okay, let's see what's going on so some people thought it was women, some thought it was men, but it's definitely more men. And in fact, in movies like Aladdin, you have a huge difference. There's just a few female characters. Okay, then, I guess I'm doing it in the wrong order. Okay, here's the word counts. Here's the word counts for Disney. This is how much they speak, they actually speak. So this is interesting, right? Because you can see that in the earlier movies, women actually speak more. There's very few characters in those movies, and that's probably part of it, we think. But in Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, women actually speak more, female characters. In Brave, they speak more, and Moana and Frozen, it's about the same. But those movies in the middle, from Mermaid to Princess and the Frog, those Renaissance movies, as we call them, it's pretty well dominated by the men, even the talking time, and even accounting for the fact that, that there's more male characters. Okay, so let's look at Pixar. Okay, here comes the character count for Pixar, and I got the sense you guys aren't going to be too surprised by this. That's male characters versus female characters. I'll just sit here quietly for a moment and let you absorb that. There is no Pixar movie in which there are more, even slightly more, female characters than male characters. It is really, if I need you to be quiet now, okay? I love you, but mom's busy. And some of it, it's just tremendously skewed. Coco, which you're going to see, actually does a pretty good job, and that we see it's not as though women have to be more female characters than men, but I think this imbalance is kind of bad, especially when you look at it that far across. That's one of the reasons we did this research, because you can look at a single movie and say, oh, this is interesting. This one movie has a lot of male characters, but probably some of the others have more female characters, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not bad if there's a movie where there's a lot more male characters than female characters. But when every movie has more male characters than female characters, that's sort of interesting. And that was true, of course, also of the Disney movies. So there's very few movies here that have the same number of female characters as male characters, or even close. So Karen calls this phenomenon so many dudes everywhere. Okay. Oops, I went the wrong way, I think. Okay, so here's the Pitzer characters. Okay, here's the speech. Pretty similar, right? Still, the guys are talking a lot. There was a little more variation and a little more of what we might consider improvement with the Disney movies. Now, with the number of words spoken, we do find that there's one movie, Inside Out, where, actually there's two movies, Inside Out and Brave, where women talk significantly more than men.
Finding Dory as well.
Well, Finding Dory is kind of close, you know.
Very close, yeah.
They're like close to 50-50. In Brave and Inside Out, women actually speak more. It's interesting that Brave was the first movie of these directed by a woman. And there's a long, complicated story with that I'm not going to tell you today, but it does matter who's behind the scenes. And that's, one of the things I think is super important. And then Inside Out, which tells the story of a little girl and the different figures in her head who control her emotions, and the figure in her head that controls the most emotions is happiness, which I have some issues with. Joy, I believe is her name. And, but that they do actually end up talking more. So still, Pitzer's pretty, so many dudes everywhere. Yeah. So, okay. And I wanted to say about, well, I'll say something about Coco later. Karen, remind me if I forget. This is so wonderful. I love having a backup emergency co-author for these things. Okay. So one question we get a lot is, why would we do this research? Right? Oh, and from the outside, it sounds a little flaky, right? Most linguists go and study real communities of real people talking to each other and make claims about that. Why am I studying Disney films and Pixar films instead? Well, one of the first things people say, one of the things people tend to say in defense of these sorts of things, or saying that this research isn't really important or worthwhile, is it's just entertainment. It's just entertainment. It's just something fun to watch on a Friday night. It doesn't matter whether there's boys or girls or whatever, or how much they speak. And actually linguists don't do that type of research, but psychologists do. And it turns out there's evidence to support the fact that these representations in film do affect how kids see the world. So there are a number of studies by psychologists that have shown, child development specialists that have shown, that interacting with children's media influences children's ideas about occupations, so who can do what job, relationships, what it means to be married, for example, bodies, what type of bodies are good, sexuality, what type of sexuality is good, and gender roles. What should women do? What should men do? What are their responsibilities in the home, and that kind of thing. And for the Disney princess movies in particular, there's actually some studies of those specifically. And just not only did they study it and so there was an influence, but what they found was that the more of the Disney princess movies these little girls watch, and it's a really well done study, which I can tell you more about if you want. But the more of the Disney princess movies that these little girls watched, and little boys, I believe, the more likely they were to cling to traditional gender roles. So the woman should cook dinner. The man should be the one who takes out the trash. Girls should look pretty, like that kind of thing. The more they watch the Disney princess movies, the more they tended to agree with those statements. So it does have an effect. It does have an effect. And while when we looked, I don't know if you remember, when we were looking at the speech amounts, it looks like things got better over time. In the latest movies, there was less of a disparity between males and females in terms of how much they talked. But remember that thanks to video and DVDs, and now Disney Plus having its own streaming service, you can watch any of these movies as many times as you want. So if a little girl's favorite movie is Aladdin, she can watch it as many times as she wants. And it's not just the more recent ones that are available to them. So I think that's why we think it's important to look over the whole genre, all the princess movies and all the Pixar movies. Okay. That's all we have. I have an extra little plug for our books. Our book is called Language and Gender in Children's Media. I put coming soon. We actually haven't turned it in yet, so that might be sort of a relative soon, but probably sometime next year if you're interested in knowing more. And there's thanks to my current research assistants. And I can bring anything back if you want, but I'm going to stop sharing screen now. La la. That's it. One more thing I wanted to say before I open for questions, which is it does matter who's behind the scenes. That's why I said for Brave, it was a female director for the first time. And it's probably not coincidence that the women in that movie actually talk more than the men. One of the reasons I love Coco is because there were three directors behind it that were the kind of key people. One is a white man, one is a white woman, and one is a Latinx man. And I think thanks to his being Mexican American, that brings some depth and interest to the movie that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So that was my other little comment on that, and my little setup for Coco. So that's what I've got. I am more than happy to take questions. You can unmute or you can put them in the chat if you like, whatever you feel comfortable with. That's just a little teeny corner of our research. So, you know.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you go about this research? Like, you know,
Sure.
Yeah.
For one of the things that was interesting is when I'm at a conference, they always ask, you counted every single word that was spoken in all of these movies? And I always say yes. And then I'm like, wait, no. I did not personally count every word that was spoken. Research assistants from Pitzer counted every single, thank you, Karen, counted every single word that was spoken. That's what we have minions for. Yeah, you know, we got the scripts for the movies offline. Somebody checked them against the actual movie to make sure it was accurate. We counted every single word that was spoken by every character who spoke at least one word. We didn't include the songs in this part of the research. Over Karen's strenuous concern at the beginning, although now I think we're going to do something separate with the songs. And then we just started looking at things that we could measure objectively. So the stuff I showed you is actually just the warm up. I mean, that was just kind of our background, although it turned out to be really interesting in its own right. I'll tell you right now, when I asked you that question, I thought that there would be more female characters and they would talk more in the princess movies, because princess movies and they're aimed towards girls, and they made a big deal out of trying to make some of the movies be the type of thing where it would be appealing to boys as well. So, but no, I was pretty surprised. But yeah, we've looked at all kinds of things. Has Disney responded to your research in any way? Not directly. My friend, I was talking about my friend who worked as an engineer at Disney. He told me there's somebody over there in an office whose job it is to keep an eye on you. I was on a CBS morning news show. They asked me to come on and talk a little bit about this briefly, which I did. And at the end of the segment, the guy who was narrating it said, "Thank you, Dr. Fott." He said, "We reached out for Disney and they said they have no comment." So I have a feeling they probably don't like me very much, but that's okay. You know, I'm not too concerned about it. And you know what? I'm not out to get them either. I honestly didn't know what was going to happen when I, set up this research. I didn't know it was going to be so imbalanced in terms of men. I had my suspicions about Pixar because you see a lot of guys in those, but, I didn't know what was going to happen. And it's sort of like, if they don't want it to be that way, they can fix it, right? I've counted for them. Now they don't have to worry how many women and men they have represented. Now they know if they want to do something about it. Now they know. And lots of other stuff that we've worked on, compliments, commands, lots of things that we've looked at, the patterns for gender. If they want to use that information to do something, they can. Okay, there's another question in the chat. Yeah. Yes. Oh my God, what a brilliant. Okay, hopefully you can all see the chat. Okay, so from Rosa, this is, okay, I have a 6-year-old daughter. We watch a lot of Disney. We try to discuss the messages. After watching Mulan, my daughter was very annoyed. And she said that the lesson of the movie is that girls shouldn't be in the army, which made us sad and surprised us. Okay, so the studies that I was talking about, the good news is there are studies that show that if the parents talk about this stuff with the kids, it makes a difference. It ameliorates it. So then they don't have those strict ideas about gender. So first of all, you're totally doing the right thing. I had a student absolutely lose it in class. A male student who was very upset because he goes, "You're telling us not to watch Disney. Disney is our heritage." Oh, he was so upset. And I said, "I'm not telling anyone not to watch anything. I'm not telling you not to show this to your children. Show anything you want to your children. I'm just telling you that these are the patterns. And I'm just saying, if it was me, I would like to know that information so that I can incorporate it into conversations, like everything. It's not like, oh, whatever, talking to your kids about sex or whatever. You want to control the information flow, kind of, and that's important to watch. If you're going to watch these movies with your kids or your grandkids, to be like, wow, I didn't like the way he talked to her, and help them open up the topic. So this is perfect that in Rosa's family, that her daughter felt comfortable to say this to her. And now she can bring it up like, yeah, that was kind of funny, because now that Mulan's in the army, she's really good at it. So why wouldn't you want girls in the army? In fact, I saw some girls on TV that were in the army. And when I see pictures of people in the army here, there are a lot of girls. So I wonder why they said that. Maybe they just weren't thinking, whatever. I mean, I'm not a child psychologist and I don't know your kids, so you have to do it your own way. But these conversations are super, super helpful. Okay, when and why did the diversity of character and cultural settings come about? I think there's been a push in society in general to have a more diverse cultural representation everywhere. Disney's not going to do anything unless it makes money. So I think at some point they began. Sorry, go ahead, Karen. Do you want to jump in?
I can add a little bit more color to this because I was just working on a chapter on this very topic.
Go for it.
Specifically, this is totally true that there's been increasing kind of pressure and discussion and discourse overall in the United States to get more diversity on screen, which I think is great. Specifically, it was like about the mid-90s that Disney in particular started responding and like involving itself in this kind of conversation. Because in the early 90s, there was a slew of studies that came out about girls losing self-confidence in adolescence, like the crisis of girl empowerment, which like led to this huge like girl power kind of movement in the mid-late 90s with a specific eye towards media. This was like the first time that like Americans as a squad were thinking about like, oh, we should be thinking really hard about what we put in front of our children, especially our young girls. And we need to give them good role models. And minority groups in the United States started really speaking out and being, like mentioning the lack of role models, particularly for girls. And because there's sort of a mounting cultural pressure and cultural momentum towards greater diversity, Disney does like making money. And so they responded. And actually in the 90s, they responded by putting characters on screen, but not necessarily, as Carmen said, behind the screen. Mm-hmm. So, I was just researching Mulan and I watched their making of documentary of all of this whole creative cast of white Americans being really proud that they spent 18 whole days in China taking pictures to prepare for the making of Mulan. And compare that with like the production of Moana just a few years ago, where they involved a huge, a way more diverse cast behind the scenes and cultural sensitivity trained like people and cultural consultants to make sure the movie was a more earnest attempt to display the culture. So I think that we can see that the cultural conversations we have both in the home and nationally actually are making a noticeable difference in the way these movies are made.
Yeah, I know we need to wrap up, but I just want to emphasize two of the things that Karen brought up that I think are the most important. The first is it matters who's behind the scenes. It really matters. Pocahontas is a terrible movie, in my opinion, and a terribly culturally insensitive, and they just didn't do that. They didn't really make use of cultural consultants. So that's really important. That really matters. And I think that's what makes Coco so good. So you'll see when you see it. But the other thing is these movies make money, right? There was a whole slew of movies in a stretch right there. And not just Disney, Black Panther, Crazy Rich Asians, Coco won the Academy Award, right? These movies that are focused on a cast that does not centralize white middle-class characters made a tremendous amount of money. Nobody's going to do it just because it's good, but they were well made, they were interesting, and it showed that you can do diversity in that way, and it's not just some PC thing. It's very good, and it's very good for the world, but it also makes money for them, and that's, I think, the main impetus. So we ran over a little bit, Jill. Sorry.
That's okay, Carmen. Do you want to just give your thoughts about a suggestion to Disney and Pixar, and then we can wrap?
hire people behind the scenes, hire a diverse cast behind the scenes, because when you do that, you get things that are new and different. I think one of the things that's exciting about Coco is it's not the same old things over and over again, because it's drawing on a bunch of really important Mexican American tropes, the alebrijes, the Day of the Dead, the whole cultural thing behind it. No one's seen that before, right? Everything else is just reimaginings of the Grimm stories again and again. So it's worth it to you to do it, and it brings something new. It brings something new and exciting. And it's the only way. If you want to do a movie that covers different cultures, it's the only way to do it responsibly. Bring in the consultants, because it'll be better. Moana too. Moana made bank. So, it's better for everybody. That's my suggestion to them.
There's also, just to tack on to that, it definitely holds true for gender as well. There have been very, very few female writers and directors in Disney and Pixar over the years. Some of the only ones, notably, are Brave, and Frozen had a female director and co-writer and co-director. And you also notice that that was one of the first movies that in the entire canon that has more than one main female character. And while it's not a perfect movie, even just the idea of like, what if we had two women? Like, it's sort of.
And a guy doesn't have to save them. Yeah.
And that I have to believe that was partially Brenda Lee behind the scenes, just bringing that perspective in and bringing that storytelling perspective in.
Might be Jennifer Lee that directed.
Jennifer Lee, not Brenda Lee. Oh, I'm thinking of Brenda is the name of the Brave.
Yeah.
Anyways.
All right. So anyway, if you guys want to know more about this, if you want anything else, you can find me on the Pitzer website very easily. I'm happy to follow up with you, answer other questions if you have them, or whatever you like.
Well, thank you both, Carmen and Karen, so much. This was really fun. Thank you for your enthusiasm doing it and the time that you took. It's been really wonderful to have this, and really interesting. Even after listening to your interviews and things like that, I learned a lot more tonight. So thank you.